Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case addressing one of the questions that I'm getting the most lately, which is what's going on in China? It's 25 million people in Shanghai locked in their homes without the possibility of leaving, forced to stay there, locked literally with padlocks in their buildings, having in some cases a tape from the official government of China that if you break that label you have huge consequences to deal with. Before I go on with the video, remember, if you're interested in any of this stuff, you want to start preparing, and best thing to do so is getting sweet survival skills, and also for the economic aspect, Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse. Just 10 reviews away from reaching the 1,000 reviews in Amazon. So if you have this book and you liked it, leave that review in Amazon. It would be hugely appreciated. I really want to reach that 1,000 mark. It would be a big deal for me. Let's get to the video and what's going on in China.
The world's third largest city remains in lockdown. 25 million residents ordered confined to their homes.
They're using bicycle locks and padlocks just to keep people in.
CNN's David Culver says government workers sealed his front door to prevent him from leaving.
Just clarify, you're shut in? There's like a paper barrier keeping you from exiting, going to the food market?
I can't go outside that door. There's a seal. If I do, physically I could do it, but I would break the seal, and there's repercussions for that.
In some cases, they literally lock them like with keys, with padlocks. I mean, this is not that much of a big news. People have been welded into their door, into their homes before in China. Guys, I know you don't like it when I stop the video, but I just want to reinforce this idea. It is never good to live under a communist regime, under a dictatorship. And there's people that will argue, oh, China is not communist. Yes, it is a communist country. It is literally a country where there's just one political system, which is the Communist Party, and it's the only one that is allowed. This is one of the things that I've seen, especially with all the Ukraine stuff going on. People have had this confusion about, well, dictatorships are really not all. Yes, they are. They're always bad. They're always terrible. And awful things happen when you have a dictatorship. When you have a dictator running a country in perpetuity forever, like it's the case of China, like it's the case of Russia, the case of Venezuela, and all of these places where you have a dictator in power, that is never good. And this confusion that people have, well, we don't have that much freedom. Yes, you have. You have a lot more freedom than these poor guys in China, or the poor people in Russia, where if you even hold a sign that says no to war, you're just dragged and thrown into a hole for God knows how long. So the confusion about it's all the same, no, it's not all the same. These people, the Chinese government, the authoritarians, the dictators, want you to think that it's all the same because that works in their favor. But this is how you really live under a dictatorship.
Draconian measures are enforced by men in white hazmat suits, known as Big Whites. Some citizens in the authoritarian nation are losing it, defying the lockdown by screaming from their apartment windows into the night. It's straight out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. Some people are yelling out, "We're starving."
So, again, don't live in China, don't live in Russia, don't live under any communist regime or any kind of dictatorship of any kind, no matter what they try to label themselves as. Like, no, we're really cool dictators. No, there's no such thing as a cool dictator. You're not going to be enjoying the same rights that you have in democratic nations, where with all the flaws that you may find, and there's plenty of that, especially these last 2 years, we've seen a lot of this stuff affecting countries where we were shocked by it. Like, really, is this how we're living now? Well, a lot of that has to do with spreading this mentality, this philosophy, this way of life to the rest of the world and normalizing it. You should never accept that. You should never take for as a way of life living like this. So, being in buildings like this, yeah, sure, that's probably something you want to avoid. Now, awful things will happen no matter where you are under dictatorships. But if you're in a city, in a building, someone can just, Big White comes, locks that door, or puts a tape that's going to be sentencing you to 10 years of jail if you break that seal, which is the kind of thing they do. In China, in Russia, you don't have freedom when you're living in a dictatorship. Don't confuse things that are not equal.
American Shanice Brakim, who lives in Shanghai, hasn't been outside her apartment in 12 days.
I did a poll with, I don't know the number of people, but I feel like it was enough. How many people?
It is insane. And this goes on and on. I don't want to make this too long, but,
Another American, Cameron Johnson, tells Inside Edition his neighbors have improvised a barter system.
You trade carrots for bread mix, or the other day we traded a few of the dumplings that we had made to somebody for some school supplies for the kids.
It is insane. The screams of people literally starving in those buildings because most people don't have a couple weeks worth of food in their houses, especially not in a place like China where everything is super restricted and you just have, a lot of, I've seen videos of how people live over there. I mean, I've been watching these for years now. They buy day by, and this happens pretty much in most countries nonetheless, but in China, they just buy whatever it is they need that day. They just go and get themselves their meal, their lunch. They have very, very little to spare. The idea of owning a lot of stuff is not only frowned upon, but it's something that a communist dictatorship really does not want. So people are used to living with very limited freedom in terms of self-sufficiency. Being in a city, definitely not the kind of thing you want to go through when something like this ends up happening. And I guess there's a lesson there for all of us. I personally don't like living in a place like that, a huge building with people one on top of the other like a damn rat. I think it's awful. But I understand that people may have different opinions and may like living like that, or maybe you're living in New York City. But the culture and okay, man, whatever. If that's what you love, life's too short to do anything else. But understand the limitations. That's what I always insist on. Have options. One of the things I explain also in street survival skills in terms of having plan A, B, and C. So this is your plan A, living in a city in Shanghai. Okay, what is it you're gonna be doing when things start getting even worse? Again, I wouldn't even be there in the first place. But let's say you live in a city in some other country, in a developed nation where you do have more freedom than in damn China. Still, you need to have those plans. You need a place outside the city, outside the state. My advice, one's placed outside the country entirely, if it ever comes down to that. And you're seeing how this is just being verified by all of these events we're watching, from the pandemic to war in Ukraine. If you're in Ukraine, we should have left there a while back. I would have left in 2014 when I first made those videos regarding war over there, the invasion of Russia. If you're living in Russia, man, you probably don't want to be there either. You have lots of better options without a doubt, where you're not living under a dictatorship. Folks, it's going to be all for now. Why is this happening, though? One of the questions I just... There's two possibilities. At least this is the way I see it. Number one, probably the most likely, they miscalculated, lied their way too far maybe, and the cases they're seeing are just through the roof. And doing what dictators do, they only find more restrictions, more force as the only solution for their problems. They presented this idea of, yes, we've dealt with this so well, when that was really not the case, right? They lied so as to have a positive view in the international community, and that was all just a scam, a lie, like they usually do. Politicians lie, dictators lie even more, especially in communist dictatorships like what you see in Russia and China. They will lie all day long. And this is something that surprises people sometimes. It really shouldn't. This is what they do. There's no freedom in these places. That's why when they're saying, zero COVID, okay, all of a sudden you went from zero COVID to we have to weld people in their damn houses or lock them with padlocks or threatening them with horrible sanctions. Notice how all of this facade, all of this lie just fell apart. That is most likely the case. There's also a possibility that there's really something going on with a different variant or strain that is particularly bad and has just caught the entire country by like a firestorm, and they're really not finding ways of dealing with. That could also be a possibility. Being China, we just don't know. They lie all day long through their teeth, so nothing that they say can actually be considered a fact to take into account. But these two would be the ones I would consider the most. Either they, which is the far more probable thing. They said they had not a problem anymore. They released. They got rid of all the precautions they were taking just as to make it look like, yeah, we're so much better than the West, and all of that lie fell apart. Or something, a mutation, a more dangerous one, could be spreading, which is entirely a possibility. You just never know with these things. That's why you never open that damn Pandora box, which they did in the place that should not be mentioned, because it's still the kind of thing that YouTube frowns upon, but we all know what went down there. It could be. You just don't mess with nature in this way. Anyway, folks, that's going to be all for now. See you in the next video. Take care.